What if the best way to get ahead isn't chasing the next title, but focusing on what's best for the business? This week on Coach2Scale, I sat down with Dan Freund, a guy I worked for 10 plus years at Oracle, and someone who's led sales at high growth companies like QuickBase, Brandwatch, Brightcove, and now Invoice Cloud. Dan breaks down what it really means to think like an owner, why conviction matters more than consensus, and how to build the kind of internal network that opens doors. This episode is full of real talk for aspiring leaders and experienced operators alike. Check it out on YouTube, drop your take on LinkedIn, and don't forget to subscribe to the Coach2Scale YouTube channel so you never miss out on what's next. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Today's guest is someone I know really well. I worked for him for over a decade at Oracle, and I've been lucky to call him a close friend ever since. He's the kind of leader who makes you better, whether you're ready for it or not. He spent more than 16 years at Oracle building high-performing teams and sharpening the leadership playbook that's guided his career ever since. Since then, he's held the top sales seat at companies like QuickBase, Brandwatch, and Brightcove, and now he's the chief sales officer at Invoice Cloud. You know what really makes him stand out? It's this. He's never chased titles or spotlight. He believes that if you focus on what's right for the business and not just yourself, and back your ideas with real conviction, the doors are going to open. That mindset shaped his career, and it's the core of today's conversation. With that, Dan Freund, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. So
Dan, let's get right into it. There's a lot of myths in this business, right? Stuff that you hear personally, that you hear all the time, that you think's like, I don't agree with that. What's one of those myths when it comes to building and leading teams that you think's, maybe misguided or complete BS?
I think one of the biggest myths is that accounts can't move around, that certain established senior people that have been proven can't lose key accounts where they have relationships because somebody else can't possibly build that relationship, or they might quit if that account moves. There's all this FUD that floats around when somebody becomes a new sales leader or joins a new company. All these people come out trying to scare that leader into, let's stay with status quo. This is what we know. This is how we operate. And the fact of the matter is, people are way more resilient than you give them credit for. Customers are, partners are. If you hire good people, if you have good culture and you have high standards, we're going to get alignment in the territories, in the accounts, with the customers, and you're going to have broader success. So don't give into the fear. Trust that senior people can adapt and grow. New people can come in, pick up accounts that we're used to having a very established rep, and now they have to deal with a new rep. You can do all of these things and successfully grow your business.
Yeah, but Dan, what about the top performers? What about the big personalities who are going to be like, oh, I'm out of here, I'm going to leave? Because look, there's a lot of fear that leaders have that says, if I take these accounts from my top performers and give them to the new people to help make sure there's equity, there's optimized territories, those top performers are going to leave. What do you think? What do you say to that?
Yeah, they may threaten it. They rarely do. And if they're truly a talented sales professional, which they probably are, you have to talk to them about continuing to evolve and helping the business grow. Because if we're sales professionals, we're all here to help the business grow. That's our job. That's why we get to pay the variable comp, the upside in career growth. We're here to help the company grow. If we can't bring new people into the business and provide them with a viable territory assignment, enablement and support so that they can succeed, we have this revolving door. And a lot of sales organizations go flat because they're clinging to 2 or 3 senior people, and they have a revolving door of new hires that are struggling to succeed because they come into greenfields. They're essentially a high-paid SDR or BDR, spend all their time trying to get meetings and build pipeline. and they close almost nothing. They either end up on a performance improvement plan or they quit out of frustration, and then you hire another person. I've seen that many times in my career. And I broke that pattern at Oracle when I first became a sales leader and a manager. And that was probably the best thing I ever did. And I was nervous when I did it. Just truth be told,
I think that's important.
I was nervous about the FUD from the senior people, and they believed it. They weren't making it up. Like, they really believed I was setting them up for failure. And, I had to grovel a little bit and cut some deals and say, hey, look, if somebody else doesn't make it and you're doing all the right things halfway through the year, like, I'll find a way to move some pipeline over to you. Like, I will go to work for you if you will put yourself out there and help grow this team and grow this org. Fortunately, stuck around.
And I had a front seat view into that. And I use that example a lot. And I personally learned a lot by watching that and going through that. I just hosted an event, our first live event the other day on Tuesday, called Closing Arguments. And we had a live debate, and we had two really great guests that were on different side of a question. The question was, can a sales leader be friends with his or her salespeople? And one guest was emphatic that you can and you must. And the other one was emphatic that you can't and you risk a lot if you are. I know where you kind of stand on this. But so, because fair to say that you're in more of the camp that you can be friends with your people. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. And I would argue that you should try to be. Everybody recognizes what their role is. And if I'm sitting in a seat where I have a broader view of multiple people in multiple territories, like, I'm an asset to you because I can be a facilitator of different ideas, different approaches, better ways. And just to go off the topic for a little bit, I fortunately had very diverse teams, and you were part of my team. Everybody on my team was excellent at one or two things. Nobody was excellent at everything. None of us, myself included. We all have gaps and we all have strengths, and we learns from each other if you create an environment where they're hearing each other talk about their challenges with the territory assignment, what's their account plan, what's their strategy to win. And we both watched this happen. Now, you were part of it. There's somebody that's really, really good selling to the economic buyer. There's somebody else that's really good selling to the technical buyer. There's somebody else that's really good at relationship building and spreading out an account. There was no one rep that was great at all of those things. And as you build those relationships, you sell more. And getting back to the friend thing, the harder you work together, the more you travel together, the more you challenge each other and have some open, lively debate, it's hard not to become friends.
And that's fair.
It doesn't mean you can't ask something tough of a friend. Like, how many times have I asked you to do something tough?
Well, I always took it as there was an extra burden for that, right? You had to run through walls. You had to do more than what was expected. You had to answer your boss's call when you know he's on an hour commute and he calls you to keep you company the whole ride home and grill you about the business. Like, there's all these things. There's a responsibility there. But the reason why I bring it up, and I referenced it on this debate that I moderated, which is, the person who said you can't be friends said, hey, you have to make tough decisions sometimes, and that friendship's going to cloud judgment. And I thought about the hard decisions that you made to pull accounts from people and make those types of difficult decisions with people that I would say you were friends with. How did you go about doing that and making sure that the friendship didn't get in the way?
I think in my case, if I look back on it, I think I was genuine enough so that the people knew that I sincerely cared about them and their success. I wasn't trying to take that away from them. And I think they also recognized and somewhat respected the fact that I cared about the success of others on the team that didn't have the tenure, hadn't proven themselves, but were taking a shot on by hiring them. When I laid out the alternative, which is these revolving door territories that we had low success rates in, I made the case. I'm like, look, I'm in this seat to grow us from here to here. And that can't be done unless everybody on the team succeeds, at least at some level. And I look at that a lot now at Invoice Cloud. We look very, very carefully at rep success rate every month and every quarter and every year. In fact, we have OKRs set up to show rep participation levels. And what can we do to have somebody hit the board sooner and ramp faster so that they're successful? That means they'll be here next year and they'll sell even more. Like it's a win for everybody. The team gets stronger. You have more people winning and succeeding. You have more people you can learn from. You have more brand awareness out in the marketplace. You have partners that want to work with you. There's a snowball effect of growth and goodwill if you create that environment. But it's hard to do, especially as a new leader, especially when your back's up against the wall and you're under the gun to make a number. It's hard to do.
Yeah, the number's always hanging over everybody's head. So Dan, what's the time when you championed an idea, let's say that was risky, but you knew it was right for the business and it paid off?
Yeah. I think the biggest one, when I pitched the idea of building out an emerging markets organization, which is essentially SMB, it was lower end of the market. It was one that nobody was specializing in. We weren't segmented that low in the revenue band, and people just use those as opportunistic deals that would pop up if somebody got some venture money, but there was nobody hunting in that space as a full-time job. And I thought it would be more effective to get a specialized organization that was focused on it, that was leaner, like a merging of an inside sales function in a field sales function, so that we could take cost out of the business with the coverage model, but we could have hyper focus and specialists that were used to selling into venture-backed startups. I pitched it not with the thought that I would ever have anything to do with it. I just thought it was a smarter way to go to market where it could save the company money and actually grow faster with the specialization. So I pitched it, and my excitement around the pitch was that I felt like an innovator. I'm like, hey, I have this idea. I want to sell it and see if somebody else that could make it happen thinks it's a good idea. So I brought it forward, and I had a few slides, marker and a whiteboard, and basically showed the org design, showed the quota allocation, kind of what the rules of engagement would be between existing orgs. And the person I pitched it to was essentially the acting COO for North America for sales. And he had this like smirk on his face. And at the end of our meeting, he's like, I'm just at a loss on one thing, Dan. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, I don't understand how this helps you. I'm like, what do you mean? What's in it for you if we move to this org? I'm like, I don't know if there's anything in it for me. I just think it's a better way to grow the business and get specialization in this market. He just kind of nodded. Well, unbeknownst to me, he brought it to his boss, who was running North American sales at the time, Keith Block. And Keith liked the idea. So he wanted me to pitch it to Keith. I pitched it to Keith. I think it was like 2 or 3 months later, I got tapped on the shoulder and invited to interview for a much, much bigger job that I never thought I'd be invited to interview for. And that led to a really big promotion, a lot more responsibility. You know, you and I worked together for years after that. And it was just, great for the business. It was great for a lot of people that were in and around me and their careers. And if I look back on it, I'm mostly proud of the fact that I brought an idea forward. A lot of people don't bring an idea forward unless they're forced to, or, it's in their job description. This one I felt like was outside of my job description, and it was really fun because it made an impact on the business. And, this is at a big established global leader. Sometimes you join a company like Oracle and you're like, everything's already been figured out. Like such a big company, they know how to do everything already. Like I got to just see if I can keep pace. And that's not the case. It doesn't matter where you are or how big your company is. There's an opportunity to optimize on something or do something better. And I think it's really rewarding if you can create that opportunity for others, potentially yourself.
Well, I remember right when I was leaving Oracle, I had a conversation with Mark Hurd. And by the way, it's really sad. We're mentioning these people, Rudy Corsi, Mark Hurd, they're no longer with us. Rest in peace. But I remember him saying something like, this SMB, this emo business, it's been the top performing business in Oracle for the past 5 years, right? Like, so that's pretty a part of, that was your idea. So I think, there was a stretch there where that was a huge bright spot in a very, very, very big company. But Dan, this notion of selling an idea, getting autonomy to implement it, it wasn't the first time that happened to you. So I'm going to bring you a little bit in the Wayback Machine, a conversation I think you had that led to your first, I don't know if it was your first management position, but it was a pivotal point early on in your management career where you sold an idea to, I think it was John Boucher, who was your boss at the time. And the key thing that I'm trying to get at here is not just having conviction in your ideas and presenting them, but the power of the empowerment that comes when your boss gives you autonomy and believes in you to implement something. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was really cool. When I first got promoted, we basically recut our whole coverage model, so it was more of data driven. I'm a new leader. I had been covering mid market Connecticut for technology, and then all of a sudden I get New England, and I've got all these new territories I'm unfamiliar with. What I was covering earlier, we had a mixed bag of how people were performing based on their tenure and what zip codes they were in. I just said, okay, I've got to make some sense of this. And I spent, the good part of a couple of months analyzing 3 years of bookings reports to figure out who was buying from us, what was the buying frequency, what industry, what zip code. And I just built a big spreadsheet and tried to make sense of it all. And the long and the short of it is, I came out with a number of what were statistically equitable territories. And then, we had some leftovers to what we call the geography territories. I had reps that were saying, you're setting me up for failure. I had newer people that didn't know what was good or bad, but I had a VP, John Boucher, who I reported to, of the idea. And I said, here's the deal. I'm taking a named account list from what before was 250 accounts on a typical named account list, and I brought it down to 80. And one of the things I took out was I took out all the manufacturers. And that's because only 20% of our bookings came from manufacturing. So I'm like, okay, we don't have to focus there. And I did a few other things that made sense to him. It made sense in the model. It didn't make sense to my senior established reps, but we sold through that. At the end of the day, we rolled it out. I would say 6 months later, something would pop up on somebody's account. It would be a manufacturing account on a named list that was supposed to be all business services. And Boucher would come right over the top and say, wait a second, that wasn't the deal. You told me no manufacturing. And I was just smiling because I loved it. That means he was listening. That means he bought it. He cared. We just had some operational cleanup to do, and somebody might have mischaracterized business services from a manufacturer because they thought there was pipeline. I don't know. But the net of it was he held me accountable to my plan. At the end of our first full year, every single rep on the team made their number, and everybody was proud to be on the team. And we went from like bad news bears to being a really cool team to work on with great people. And then it kind of grew from there.
And that's an awesome story. And that point needs to be driven home. Everybody on the team made the number. That's very rare these days. And obviously there's differences in time and market conditions and economy and all that stuff. But that's not what I'm hearing that you're attributing to the individual's team success. It seems more, it's like a lot of thought went into creating these optimized territory. So everybody had an opportunity to showcase their skills. Everybody had an opportunity to succeed. And, my guess is there wasn't someone who's at 500% and someone who was 100. Everybody's probably around the same. Would that be fair?
That's absolutely true. It worked out that way. I mean, our top performers were probably in the 120% of plan range versus in a previous year, they might've been 200% of plan. But we had new hires that were knocking out their number. They exceeded plan, and they went on to sell the next year and got stronger. And we built momentum as a result of that shift in coverage model. And again, it's disruptive. It definitely freaks a lot of people out. But if you make them part of the plan, one of the things I did is, we cut these equitable kind of by doing like a randomizer for the named account list. And I let my most senior people pick first. So that was like, hey, they're supposed to be all equal. If you think one is better than the other or has more of accounts that you've been familiar with, you get first dibs. I want to be as fair as I can for everybody and where they sit, but I don't buy into the entitlement mindset of, hey, I've been here so many years, so I get everything. Because in most companies, it's super hard to hire somebody new that's going to be successful. if they walk into a greenfield. That's just been my experience.
So, and you had experience bringing in people from outside the industry that weren't enterprise tech sales superstars. But when you hired them, they were doing things like selling office furniture, for example. And I know you've talked a lot about the importance of networks, right? And it's often said that your network is your net worth. And everyone's going to disagree with the importance of building an external network. But can you talk about the importance and the power of building an internal network, whether you're an individual contributor or a sales manager?
Yeah, no, it's great. Great one. This is something I learned by watching new people that I hired. It wasn't something I did. I learned a lot from people that were selling for me or with me, but I was following them. This one new hire came in fact, he was the first sales rep hire of my career. And I watched him come in and very quickly started inviting SEs to lunch, maybe a manager from an adjacent sales team, that would sell a different product set. They'd be going out for beers after work or getting together on a weekend, like pretty presumptuous. And within his first month with the company, he invited me over to dinner with his wife and, for me to bring my wife. And again, this is New England and generally people aren't that friendly that early. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, who is this new rep inviting me to his house for dinner? Like, that's pretty gutsy of him and pretty forward. But of course I went, we had a good time, everything. And the person I'm talking about. But I watched him do the same thing with legal, with people in business practices, with people in the partner community. And he basically ramped himself in 3 months. He knew people as well as people that had been there a year and a half. And it's because he intentionally built his internal network. And it was by design, and he saved himself so many steps in the process. So it's, you and I used to talk about this with customers, build a relationship before you need one. He did that internally. And as you move up market in your career, everything's a team sport. The people that do the biggest, most complex, most competitive deals successfully, they leverage all their resources. A lot of us hear people talk about it. We see few people actually do it. This is a person that did it early on, compressed his ramp to productivity, a perennial top performer. And it was basically making his value to the customer greater than what he could bring without his internal network.
Yeah, that could be a whole episode in and of itself, kind of talking about that whole dynamic. So you're talking about a lot of things that make people successful, having conviction in your ideas, presenting your ideas in a concise fashion, executing those ideas, thinking about what's best for the business. You talked about building networks, but you also mentioned earlier that there's always the number hanging over your head. What do you look for when you're promoting someone? Is it performance only, or do you factor in their ability to see and solve other types of problems?
Yeah, no, it's the latter. You want to go beyond the performance, but there are certain stable stakes in that. In my orgs, our requirement is you go to the ends of the earth to execute. As long as you're not doing something illegal and unethical, it's in bounds.
Nobody dies, nobody gets fired.
Yeah, it's like, the culture that we lived in for many, many years, looking back on it, I took it for granted at the time. That was our normal. And since I've been to other companies post-Oracle, a lot of people don't run at that level and they kind of operate at the customer's pace and they wait for next steps from their customer. And we operated in an environment where we would anticipate obstacles and try to solve for them before they appeared, or maybe ensured that they didn't. So I think as table stakes, you need to have that attitude of doing everything and anything we can to execute and within reason. And the reason is you have to make the next quarter and the one after that, and you have to set up for a stronger next year. You can do these things in parallel. They're not mutually exclusive, but you have to watch it. If you have everybody locked up in daily forecast meetings, and you and I've lived through that, sometimes I bring it on my people and I can't help myself. I ping them for updates and they're like, no change from 15 minutes ago, Dan, when you asked me. Like, you just can't help it. But that can tie you up as a leader because then you don't have a scalable organization. So what I've seen of leaders that are successful are the ones that do a pretty good job of toggling back and forth between having discipline around a process where they run their team, where there's a known expectation every week that when you show up to do your pipeline review, your forecast review, you're going to be able to demonstrate that you move the ball, that you are proactively influencing next steps, that you have some level of ownership and clarity around what your mission is. And then the next week, your boss is going to ask you the same type of questions. So as a sales leader, you've got to create that pattern of familiarity of what your play is and how you run your operation. At the same time, you're running this operation. I think it's really important to be able to jump into deals. And for most sellers, I mean, if you're in a high volume, highly transactional business, probably less so. But if you're upper mid-market enterprise space, even as a head of sales, like you better have your hands on some deals and be close enough to your partners so that you can influence and help and coach in order to get to the number. So we don't ever get to hit pause. We don't get the free pass, but the expectation is we end the year with a stronger team than we started the year, and we have momentum going into the next one.
So it's a great segue into this question. So, many people have heard the phrase or something like it. Are you making the news or are you reporting the news? And that's a phrase that I stole from you because it hit me squarely between the eyes with it early on. And you asked me about certain deals and I would look at notes and I would basically read what somebody else told me. And you called me out and you said, Benelli, are you making the news or are you reporting the news? And I'll never forget it to this day. Can you talk about what that phrase means to you and what you're really looking for there and maybe an example of what good is?
Yeah. That's a great one to look back on. Cause I think I still
That's
use
why I
that.
have gray hair.
Yeah. I think a big part of it is depending on who you are and where you grew up. If you have an optimal product market fit, you may not realize it, but you may be servicing demand in that you're demoing every week, you're pitching every week, you're doing discovery work every week. So you're just working to the demands of the customer in the opportunity base. As you move up market and you start working on bigger accounts and doing more complex deals, your job is to proactively influence what the process is to evaluate a solution. And that's the difference, I think, between making the news and reporting it. Reporting it is when you check in and let the customer tell you what the next step is versus setting up a call with an agenda and proposing what the next steps should be, because we help companies evaluate solutions like ours. We do this every day. We found that this works really, really well for most. It may or may not for you, but could we write it down and review it together and agree on what steps we're going to take to conduct this evaluation? Now, you could say it's leading the customer, but we want to create a process that's going to drive success for both organizations. And if we can communicate that well, we're not reporting the news. Because we're enabling the customer to be able to get to a better decision faster in a more way. So that's kind of the pivot, I think, between reporting the news and making the news.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing there is instead of reacting to suggestions like, can you do a demo for me? Or we have to take this under advisement. I'll call you in a couple of weeks, right? That's what the prospect is saying. What you're saying is the top salespeople, right, are the ones that control the cycle. They're the ones that are asking questions, suggesting next steps, and getting those next steps acted upon. Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And we all have it in the experience within our sales organizations. Just like we come up with an ideal customer profile and we know the personas, we know the target messaging, we know how to build a value map to basically prove we're the preferred way. Like we know all that. Most aren't optimized across teams. So I think we have to think of the sales process the same way. Sometimes I say to people, we sell every day, but our customers don't buy every day. They may have a strong view of what steps they want to take in what order. But if we look back on our best sales cycles, we could probably pretty quickly map out what the optimal process is to evaluate. And maybe that extends the discovery time beyond what the customer has an appetite to sign up for now. But if you know with a high level of certainty, it's required, you'll be more effective at pitching the customer on why we need to have 2 more meetings before we get to demo.
Hmm.
That type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have the value of hindsight here, but let's bring it to the present. What are the best salespeople doing to differentiate themselves and be effective? And is that similar to what was done in the past, or is it drastically different?
I'm seeing an evolution in the way that we sell technology. And I think in part because it's become so much more competitive. There's so many offerings to so many companies and so many, like, if you're selling into MarTech, there's probably hundreds of MarTech solutions. Your customer can only process or evaluate so many in a given period, right? So you're competing for mind share, you're competing for budget with companies that don't even do what you do, but maybe they sell to the same persona. So that's something people have to be aware of. The people that are the best that I see are the people that can align the functional benefits of their solution with the customer's business objective. Like, this is what this company is trying to achieve, and this is why it's important. The people that we sell to are often living at the functional user level in order to help the senior executive achieve an objective. They're generally not very good at linking the two either. So now, with all the information you can find online, with all the help you can get with Gen AI, the expectation of a sales professional is to help their customer bring a better business case up that helps achieve those business objectives at the senior executive level. That's where you're doing big deals. That's where the price competitiveness goes out the window. The feature function conversation goes out the window. Now you're having conversations with them about their business using their terms. That's when you've arrived. And what I'm seeing is more and more salespeople are aware of that and are trained to operate at that level. And you should be able to compress your sales cycle, and you should be able to increase your win rate by keeping that in mind and holding your reps accountable to operate at that level. You may need some training and some tools to help you do that, but more and more sales teams are doing that. And I'm seeing a lot of evolution in this space.
Good stuff. Yeah. And you said something that's buried a little bit in there, which is you increase your win rate when you stop working on opportunities that you can't win, where it's clear that you can't match your company's solution to the objectives of the prospect. When that's clear for whatever reason, time to move. And then that also increases your win rate, in addition to connecting the dots where your solution does match to the objectives that the company's trying to meet. So Dan, you're Chief Sales Officer at Invoice Cloud. Great company, really helps the customers. I've seen it, witnessed it, within my own municipality. They help me pay bills online, over text, it totally helps me, the end user, and it totally helps the company, the municipality, get their money faster at a less cost. So love what you guys are doing. But what do you love about what you're doing and the people with whom you're doing it there?
Yeah, no. One of the things I love about Invoice Cloud is our company culture. We were founded by Bob Bennett. I believe he was on your podcast.
He was friend of the
earlier.
show.
He built a phenomenal winning culture where we are heavily invested in our customers, in our partners, and each other. So I'm not kidding when I tell you people at Invoice Cloud help one another. It doesn't matter if you're new, you've been here for years. Everybody helps everybody. It's apparent on the executive team led by our CEO, Kevin O'Brien. He has created a great culture as a follow-on to what Bob Bennett built. And I believe we're just getting started. We're in growth mode. We're profitable. We've got a high success rate, and we're hiring. So I'm super excited to be here, and I can't wait to see what the next phase looks like.
Awesome. Yeah, I can attest to having got to know a lot of the folks on the management team. Great company, great culture for sure. So Dan, it's the Coach2Scale podcast. So we bring people on who have had a lot of success, who have had failures, who are willing to talk about them, have the scars to prove it, like we talked about at the top of the show. But usually people who have had success and are willing to talk about it and share it have had the behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who is somebody whose coaching, whose mentorship has, and they could be in the business or far removed from the business, but who's somebody whose coaching has had an impact on you and your career?
I'm going to go way back, and you might laugh at this one, but actually, my high school football coach was one of the best leaders that I ever worked for. In that, philosophically, he operated in a way that I feel like I took it from him, and his belief was every position on the field mattered. We went to practice every day. We were best record in the state my senior year. We did really well. We had a lot of talented people on the team, but he did not differentiate. He would spend as much time with a lineman as he would spend with a quarterback or defensive end. It didn't matter. Every position mattered, and everybody on the team knew it. And there was a plan on the bulletin board when you came into the locker room. So at the start of every single practice, you knew exactly what drills we were doing and for how long, and it was consistent. And I came out of there feeling really proud to be part of a winning team, but also having learned the importance of making every position matter.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot there. There really is. I mean, every position matters, and that what he did. Do you remember his name? What was his name?
Ken Shaka.
What is it? Ken Shaka. So what Ken did?
Yeah, he was a great teacher. I never had him as a teacher, but as a football coach, he was tough, but he was fair, and he was consistent, and he was all in, and he lifted everybody on the team.
You think he's still around?
I hope so. He's a great man.
Yeah,
Great
we should
coach.
send this to him. People who do stuff like that, how many years later is that someone's still talking about him and remember that? That's pretty damn cool. But every position matters, and that you worked hard at practice, but you're willing to work hard when you know that your position matters, and that the expectations are set and it's consistent. It's not the flavor of the month. I think there's a whole show we could do on the importance of consistency in setting expectations and compassionate leadership. But that's really damn cool. What I do think is funny is that you use your coach as an example, because fun facts about you, Dan, that to share with the audience is, next to nothing about sports or music. And the reason why I bring in music, so you're an accomplished athlete, a long time ago, but you're an accomplished athlete, but yet you don't watch sports. And I remember that when I was first going to interview with you for a management position, which was huge for me. It was huge. Like Carlene and I talked about this opportunity. I was nervous. I was excited. This was like my big break. But I was also a huge sports fan, and the Red Sox were in the World Series. And this was the one they ultimately ended up winning for the first time in 86 years. And you asked me to interview or go out to dinner to basically a pre-interview when there was a World Series game going on. So I was like, oh, this guy's clueless. But come to find out, nothing about sports. But the other fun fact about it is for years, you don't listen to music. You've commented that you never listened to music in your car, and you had an hour plus commute each way. And but yet you caught the microphone at a Guns N' Roses concert that Axl Rose threw out, and you caught it for, I forget who you caught it for, but your nephew or
brother. No, I was there as a chaperone for my much younger brother.
That's right.
And yeah, I wasn't even supposed to be at the concert. My mother talked me into it. I went, and at the very end of the night, this is at Gillette Stadium, Axl Rose lets it go. It was like a jump ball, like 10 guys go up, big pile. I ended up with the microphone, and I held on to it for a long time, and eventually gave it to my brother when he got married. Because I felt like it was really his, but it was a cool experience.
Yeah, that's a cool story. Those guys are still around and still playing all these years later. All right. Well, Dan, listen, we covered a lot of ground. We talked about initiatives versus objectives. We talked about the importance of building internal networks, having conviction in your ideas, and, kind of sticking your neck out for stuff that's right for the business. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing some thoughts with us today.
No, thanks for having me, Matt. Great job. I really appreciate all you've done, all the years we worked together and continue to. So it's really good. Thank you.
All right. And thanks for the walk down memory lane. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing that. We appreciate it. And we also value you. Let us know you're out there. Engage with us on social media. Let us know what resonated. Let us know what a takeaway was. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you didn't like. But most importantly, let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. We want to bring content and guests to you that are not only informative, but also interesting. So thanks a lot. Good luck out there. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.